warm summer day outdoors. So my name is Fredrik Hanell, and I'm a visiting graduate student from Lund University in Sweden. I'm doing a PhD in information studies, and I'm going to give a brief talk today about some of my work, and I hope we'll have time for discussion afterwards, so I'll maybe talk like 20-25 minutes or something. Yeah. So the title of my project is New Readers for Learning, Teacher Trainees' Use of Digital Media as Tools for Learning. And I completed my LIS training back in 2005, and then I started to work as a school librarian. And while working, I developed an interest in the changing of settings when digital tools were increasingly used to cater for learning and information literacy activities. So I started to think about, well, how the practices of learning and information literacy change when you change the setting to become increasingly more digital. And when I started doing my PhD, I had the idea that I would like to investigate teacher trainees, thinking that this group would be interesting. It's mainly a group of young students, undergrads, mostly in their early 20s, and also they are future teachers. So in studying their practices, one would, so to speak, get a glimpse of the future schooling. Theoretically, I like to think about learning as a tool-based practice. Following the tradition of Russian social cultural theorists, I see learning as something mediated by cultural tools. And the central notion for me is the concept of appropriation, how you learn and sort of take something that belongs to others and make it your own, in the words of James Birch. Quite recently, I've been starting to think a bit within the framework of Desauteaux and his use of the terms strategies and tactics, which actually borrows from the military. And I think it's an interesting way of thinking about how when you appropriate something, it's something of a struggle in a way. You have the dominating powers, the institutions of education, the big ICT companies like Facebook, who develops strategies and creates places where you as a student or you as a user, or maybe both, can use certain tactics to navigate your own way in a manner. And of course you're quite limited by these strategies, but also you have a certain amount of freedom in how you can creatively use tactics to create a space of your own in all this. My first empirical study commenced actually 2 years ago. And in my first study I explored how and also why a class of Swedish teacher trainees use a large Facebook group as a platform for learning and communication related to their education. And in the paper that's been referenced here, I analyze how this Facebook group is appropriated by the teacher trainees as a tool for learning. And if you look at the previous research on especially Facebook in learning environments, I think one can say that you have basically two different viewpoints emerging. In one view, it's quite apparent that researchers seem to think that Facebook has been of quite little educational use so far. In a more recent overview of the research, it's stated that, well, the SNS is actually quite compelling to use within higher education since, well, many students are familiar with Facebook and also they spend more time on Facebook than on any other sort of digital platform. In an early and quite influential piece of work, Selwyn, he found that, well, Facebook is being used by students, but when it is being used in an education-related way, it's mainly for handling practical issues of administration or for expressing frustration or anger towards instructors or making jokes about assignments and so on. And in the same manner, Madge and others concluded that, well, students perceive SNSs as mainly a space for recreation, and they seem unwilling to have it spoiled by academic discussions. Several researchers have highlighted the social aspects of Facebook in educational settings. Ellison and others talk about the notion of social capital and how it can be accumulated through use of Facebook in undergrad studies. And quite a few researchers highlight how students appreciate being able to reach teachers instantly in an informal online environment. It's practical, and also it's compelling since it actually provides a unique method to nurture the student-teacher relationship. In this first study, this Facebook group was used by around 200 students and 2 educators. Back in 2012, the teacher trainees were doing their second semester of this teacher training program, and they were starting to become preschool teachers. And the conversations included in this first study are taking place during a 2-month period, during April and May 2012. In the first study, I wanted to observe without disturbing too much of what's going on in this big Facebook group. I gathered textual and visual online data from the group. Of course, I asked for permission and formal consent in every manner, but I was not active in the group myself in any way. I did field notes, and I also interviewed a few of the more active students in the group, and the 2 teachers. And when interviewed, one of the educators explained why they actually started this Facebook group to start with. Last autumn, we started to use a new form of explanation, and I predicted that lots of students would have questions. So I wanted a channel where I could reach as many students as possible, and maybe there's a possibility that they can answer each other instead of us educators having to come in and interpret. So it's about facilitating more efficient communication between students and teachers, and also, of course, between teachers and students. It might also be interesting to think about the other digital platforms available at the teacher training program. They are using a virtual learning environment called It's Learning that's being used for official information, handling assignments, and also has quite a lot of social tools like forums. But when I interviewed Christian, he explained many of us have Facebook like a separate tab when we browse the web, and many are online through the phone, so we are there. The fact that we actually see when something happens means that it feels like, something is happening all the time. You don't really experience that on It's Learning. And the other educator, Kenneth, he explained Well, I have created 200 forums on its learning, and I have never seen a discussion unfolding spontaneously there. Perhaps I'm sounding bitter, perhaps it is the ugly interface. So, how do teacher trainees and educators appropriate this Facebook group as a tool for learning? Well, one starting point might be to consider what types of conversations that occur in the Facebook group. Study-related issues in a wide sense are frequently discussed. And actually objects of learning are often discussed in greater detail, but social or, in a way, off-topic posts are also very common. And the results suggest that students do enjoy mixing academic discussions with more relaxed socialization, unlike some of the previous research indicated. And in fact, the social dimension is critical for the group to function as a tool for learning. And the social aspect could be described as a practice for nurturing. The practice of posting nurturing posts or nurturing comments is an important way of appropriating the group as a tool for learning, and an important part of being literate in the group. The transparency of Facebook, where every interaction is visible to everyone, means this structure of nurturing and reciprocity works within a large group. Otherwise, you would easily see these processes of nurturing in a small group, but of course it's more difficult to imagine in a 200 student group. But in a way, Facebook and its transparency makes it somewhat possible. One example of this sort of nurturing post is provided by Esther, one of the students who writes to the group spontaneously. I'm sitting here almost with tears in my eyes, but tears of joy, sitting and smiling and laughing with all the amazing movies you have done. I mean, damn, Skåne will get so many creative, playful and wonderful preschool teachers in 2015. You're awesome, every one of you. Big round of applause for everyone. So here we have an example of spontaneous posting, showing appreciation and joy towards all the work being done by her fellow students. And when talking to Christian again, I asked, what do you think is the best thing about the Facebook group for you as a teacher? And Christian replied, the buildings of relations. I think it is more exciting to work with students that I have some sort of relation with. And I think they find it more exciting to meet a teacher who they also know a little about and have some kind of relation with. So it's apparent that these social nurturing practices are quite key. And actually I would argue that these nurturing practices actually enable the two ways the Facebook group is being appropriated as a tool for learning. And the first mode of appropriation could be described as a problem-solving tool. In this manner, the group is considered a tool for sharing and providing information relevant to the education. And when appropriated like this, students tend to view the group as a credible source of information, and learning is seen as something of an instructive process. Positions of identity are fixed and stable, and students and teachers have quite different roles and responsibilities. Especially teachers are seen as authorities and representatives of the education. So when a teacher is making a statement, it tends to be taken as a fact. In the other mode of appropriation, the group is appropriated as a relation-building tool. And here, the group can be used for playful and humoristic communication, where learning could be thought of as more as a cultural process. And this mode of appropriation indicates literacy, where irony is an important community strategy, and also where positions of identity are more flexible. And teachers in this mode are not necessarily seen as representatives of the education, have more flexibility. And the way this can take shape is shown in an example. That's interesting in how you come to understand the context of conversation. And again, since Esther was quite active, it's again from her postings we will read. So in a post from April 1st, she writes, "Damn, I just heard that our university will close down the preschool teacher training program. This can't be right for ours, can it?" And quickly, another student comments, "That's right. How hard is it to look after children? Pampers and Libro, two diaper brands in Sweden, will give quick courses on how to put on diapers the right way. And Lindex, that's a clothing company, have a 2-hour training session on how to dress children quickly. Pedagogical activities are extravagant rubbish." And in these early stages of the discussion that will amount to almost 300 comments, you can see how students join in the conversation and plays along. And here Ida is using the stereotypes surrounding preschool teaching, and in a way builds on the collective sense of identity among the students. Something interesting happens a while later when one of the educators join in. Unfortunately, this is probably true. We have been reviewed by the Swedish National Agency for Higher Education and have received rather strong criticism. We had an emergency meeting at the department this Friday, and we decided to announce the information to you, the students, the Tuesday after Easter. No new program will start this fall. You who are enrolled now, enrolled for 2011, will be offered places at another university. And students and Christian continue to elaborate on this joke. It's of course an April Fool's joke. And Christian continues, to quote Vygotsky, "You just have to make the best out of the situation. The other university is not that bad." And they start joking about how every student has to buy an iPad because the other university has a criteria that every student must use iPads, and they will have to take the bus up to other university, like 1-hour bus ride. However, not all the students are sensitive to the humorous nature of this conversation, and another student writes, "I'm also a little shocked and sad." And I think this conversation lasted for maybe one day, but Esther actually told everyone that it was a joke after like 2 or 3 hours, and thanked everyone for participating. However, a handful of students or so actually believed in the joke and got quite worried and suffered a bit, being a bit shaken and shocked. So the aftermath of this April Fool's joke actually was that Christian had to write a formal apology to the group after the dean had been approached by a few of the students. And what happened here? Well, one thing you can see here is the constraining property of Facebook. It's quite difficult on Facebook in a large conversation with a multitude of perspectives and perceptions present, and the discussion unfolding in real time. It's quite hard to actually understand the context. Perhaps you join in halfway through, and perhaps you don't read everything, and even if you do, it's quite hard to get a hold of 296 comments if you join in a bit late. On the other hand, if we are in a more conventional classroom, as we are now, you have the scene set in a more clear fashion. You have the title, the presentation, you have the schedule, you have the physical appearance of the classroom where everyone faces the screen and the teacher maybe. While on Facebook, the scene has to be set in real time during the current conversation. So I would argue that the most important aspect of being information literate when Facebook group is used in educational settings is to be able to reconstruct and understand context in real time. All right, if we are to leave the first study and first paper published, we can move into more of the present day and my second study, where I sought to broaden our understanding of how and why students use Facebook in educational settings. I did an ethnographic study interested in how teacher trainees are using Facebook and other digital tools to support and organize group-based learning. So it's the same group of teacher trainees as in the first study, and I followed 3 key informants during a course from November to January this year. I followed these informants through lectures and seminars, through coffee breaks and lunches and hanging out. And through these informants, I gained access to 3 different teams who conducted group-based learning. And 2 of the teams used 2 private Facebook groups, and Google Drive, and also Prezi in one instance. So I gathered online material from these tools and also conducted semi-structured interviews with 9 students and 4 educators. While I'm still analyzing the quite rich material, I think I've so far concluded that 2 main information activities are performed when group-based learning is conducted online. To start with, the students spend a lot of time and energy to negotiate what topic to focus on. And secondly, there's a lot of shared information resources going on in these arenas. One example of how negotiation of a topic can unfold. Here's a comment from one of these small private Facebook groups. One of the students is thinking about how they will actually go about doing all this, since the assignment is quite vaguely formulated, and the students feel a need to find a focus. What is going to be? Do we choose to focus on education, children's rights to schooling? I also think what said was good, the difference between boys and girls' rights to schooling. It's a topic that's popular and one that we can find a lot about. And also you can see a certain pragmatic viewpoint here, that you need to find a topic that's easy to find material on, since actually the assignment is only lasting for 1 week, so it's quite short in time span. And in the same group, a very frequently occurring activity is posting links. I think this is one of the most frequently occurring information activities in this group. And actually, I think like in 75% of the cases, you would only have a link. And in some cases, you would have some short description or contextualization, but actually it's mainly only a link that's posted. And I don't think you would see this in a more traditional group-based learning in real life setting, that you only mentioned a link or a book without any presentation or description. So few tentative conclusions. I have continued to think about the concept of appropriation, and I like to think about it as occurring on both an institutional level and an individual level. It's quite clear from strategies formulated by the university that it's important for the university to appropriate ICTs and new media to, as it were, make learning more effective and more collaborative, while the students at the same time try to navigate within this and actually meet some difficulties, for instance, when it appears that the university has removed all the student email services. So students can't register for a free student account on, for example, Prezi, since the university is not providing student emails anymore. So you have different, at times conflicting strategies from the university, and of course the way that, say, Facebook or Google Drive is constructed also shapes the way the students can operate. And also, of course, the way one tool is appropriated affects how other tools can be appropriated. In one of the groups, Prezi was used quite a lot to visualize the information they collected and as a way to prepare for a seminar and a presentation. They made this nice Prezi with a world map and pasted information about children's schoolings from across the world in different areas. And this made the use of other tools quite different compared to the other team, where they would use, for instance, Google Drive a lot more to produce continuous writings and texts. And also from the study, I learned that quite a few students are actually critical to this more digital mode of group-based learning. Several states that the outputs from teams working a lot with Facebook and Google Drive seems to be shallower. It's often also the case that digital tools do not enable rich discussions, many students think. Yeah, so with that I would like to say thank you, and I hope you have some questions or comments. Yes, please.
Thank you for this. I am struggling right from the get-go with the word appropriation.
Yeah.
And from
So
what,
am I.
from and from what I know from Facebook, Facebook is for everyone. So so going back to your original definition, that it is taking something that belongs to someone else. And so I'm kind of struggling with my notion of Facebook, reinforced by Facebook, that Facebook is for everyone. So how can appropriation take place? And so I'm just kind of struggling with that concept from what I know about Facebook. You said you struggled with it?
Yeah, one always do with theories, I suppose. Well, I think one way to look at it is to compare Facebook or any other tool with language. I mean, words are possibly meant for everyone, but still, if we use a word to describe something, we always borrow its meaning from other people, and we impart it with a certain amount of our own understanding and our own notions of ourselves or reality. I think it's the same with Facebook. I mean, of course, it's popular technology meant for, in a way, everyday use, but it's not specifically designed to be used in educational settings as a tool for learning. And in shaping Facebook and how you use Facebook in an educational setting, I would argue, is actually an instance of you have to appropriate the tool. You have to, in some sense, make it partly your own and allow it to function as a tool for learning in that setting. don't know if that's helpful.
It is helpful. It's here in Canada, when I think of appropriation, we are often, sometimes as educators, have to deal with people appropriating another culture, like Aboriginal education, culture, Aboriginal, and we're appropriating that. So it clearly does not belong to us. We're not Aboriginal. And so there's a very distinct appropriation definition there. So that's so just
that's interesting.
trying to put everything together.
Yeah. I think also one way to think about appropriation is to contrast it with mastery of something, of culture maybe, or national anthem, or a tool, or whatever. And there's a difference between mastering something and appropriating it. You can master a tool without sort of investing yourself in it and making it part of your own, so to speak.
Anyway, can I just ask one more question? I noticed that you're on Twitter, and do you see yourself ever doing the same kind of study with the discussion that happens on Twitter?
Do you mean if I have studied the same sort of conversations on
Appropriating,
Twitter?
so substitute Twitter with Facebook, appropriating.
I haven't done very much of Twitter research myself, but definitely it would be an interesting area to explore as well. I mean, it's in a way similar, of course, to appropriating Facebook, in that it's a popular tool used by many people in many different ways, but also I think that Twitter might be, I mean, it's different in many ways, of course.
Well, yes, and you mentioned the use of irony and humor as communicative strategies, and that becomes even more evident when you only have 140 characters. And, so that's of interest. I'm interested across platforms. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I think one difference, of course, would be that Facebook is more used in everyday life, more as a space for recreation or socializing informally. I think Twitter, at least in Sweden, is more used by professionals to exchange knowledge or interesting articles, or more for professional use generally.
Yeah, it can be used. Educators use Twitter as professional development.
Yeah,
so,
precisely.
Yeah.
That's one difference.
Very interesting. Yeah.
I was just interested in the group dynamics of your first study. You mentioned the nurturing practices and the conversations and whatnot. Were you observing the group conversations directly, or did you get? I was just wondering how you, were you able to access it and read the?
I was.
I was just wondering, was there any kind of regulation that needed to be done? Like, were there any nasty offhand comments, or was it all really productive and whatnot? Because in some of the Facebooks I've been in, it can get heated, so to speak. I was just wondering what the group dynamic that way.
Well, I think the presence of the two teachers meant that conversations were generally quite civil and on topic. I mean, well, perhaps not on topic, but at least civil and pleasant enough. So no bullying or foul words or anything. Actually, I think the students created a group of their own previously. But then when one of the teachers, Christian, created his large group, all abandoned the other group and migrated into this one instead. I suppose they felt it more interesting to be able to discuss with teachers as well.
Right. It's kind of interesting they wouldn't keep both. I've seen and been part of a formal Facebook group for a class, but then there's also an informal one, which would be kind of interesting to get both sides. I mean, clearly, what's not good and what's really not good, but it'd just be interesting.
Definitely. I mean, the students do have other groups. I mean,
Right.
they are divided into classes with like 30 students, and all the classes have secret Facebook groups, and then all the small teams have their secret Facebook groups as well, organizing that specific task. So you have several sort of back channels
Yeah.
also. But however, I think this large group is quite, I don't know, in a way atypical. That it's also a sort of back channel in nature. I think the students in this group, after a while, don't think about the two teachers as mainly teachers. At least many of the students are very active, are quite familiar and friendly with the teachers. So I suppose if that was a goal from the teacher's perspective, I think they succeeded in that. Yeah. Yes?
Okay, 2 questions. First of all, do you think that familiarity on Facebook translated into easier familiarity with the students face-to-face with the teachers? Did any of your informants talk about it?
It's quite evident, yeah, that at least for students who are active in the Facebook group, they feel more secure in approaching the teachers in classrooms or in corridors, and also the teachers tend to remember these students more and know their names and so on. Yeah.
And my other question is around, did they, in the April Fool's thread where, you know, the initial posting flagged that this was ironic and you lost the fact that it was ironic, did students make use of typographical emoticons to signal irony in their posts, or did they, when they had to explain it to someone else, did they actually have to explain explicitly this is a joke, or did they use a winking emoticon, or did they make use of some of the typographical conventions on Facebook?
In the quotes I included here today, there were no emoticons.
Okay.
They are quoted verbatim.
Yeah.
I think some of the students may have used emoticons, and a few students actually said after a while, come on, this is an April Fool's joke. It has lasted long enough. I mean, you have to avoid having other students worried. Yeah. So, yeah, a few students quite early on, of course, understood and tried to signal that it was an April Fool's joke. Yeah. But also, of course, several students thought it quite amusing to elaborate on the joke and yeah, play along with it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you, I just want to, is there, in English we do LOL, laugh out loud. And so you're translating from Swedish into English. Is there something in Swedish that would be an equivalent to our LOL?
I'm afraid not.
No, okay.
You also have the same kind of abbreviations, LOL or, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because we see that a lot in our conversations where people are signaling, I'm kind of joking here, LOL, or something like that, and so that there's some social signaling that I'm not being completely serious or I'm completely joking or whatever. So, but there's not.
We have the same use in Sweden, but not in this group so much. I don't think. Perhaps it's to do with that the teachers are present that you avoid to use these more juvenile, maybe, ways of expressing yourself. I don't know. It's not very common, at least.
Fredrik, on behalf of the good German jokes.
Oh yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
for coming.
Thank you very much.
And just a reminder to everyone, our next presentation will be by Lucia Cervantes about comics in libraries and collection development for comics in libraries. So make sure to come out, and there's information on our GRC Facebook page.
Thank you.